Hi everybody, this is Dr. Sharon Shahaf with advice video for academic writers, and today I want to talk about when crises hit. So why do we reach a point of crisis in our writing practice and what to do? So in previous videos I talked about the kind of environment academia provides for us as writers, and the taboo and silences around talking, even mentioning that we struggle around our writing, the many reasons why it makes perfect sense for us to struggle with our writing, the lack of basic training in process-oriented approaches to writing, a fundamental ignorance about the elements and components of a patient, regular, self-compassionate writing practice that's aware of the stages of the process and accepts radical acceptance of where you are in the process. The fact that academic writing is goddamn hard. It fuses together at least 4 writerly modes, right? Storytelling, reporting and context, analysis and theory building. We can talk about that more another time. And throughout this whole thing, there is also the very much internalized mode of shaming, criticism, lack of compassion, constant external validation, and a mode of incentivization that is very harmful for creative pursuits. And writing, whether academic or fiction, or if you're writing whatever kind of nonfiction, writing is a creative practice. So I had one question actually on Facebook that was really good in distilling this. Somebody PM'd me and said, I notice your advice is taken from books about creative writing. I've never thought about academic writing as creative writing. I thought it was the opposite of creative writing because it's just all discipline. Yeah, that's my point. We need to start naming, acknowledging, and embracing the fact that writing, academically or not, is a creative pursuit. And as such, if we only apply discipline, if we only apply harsh self-criticism, we end up exhausting, depleting, depressing, and oppressing our inner ally, which is our inner writer, which is a younger, very vulnerable, very artistic part of us. So we need that part to play along with us if we are to recover from crisis. So yeah, all right, so back to my topic today, crisis. So I want to start by distinguishing the kind of advice I give that's preemptive advice, that talks about how to avoid getting to a crisis by highlighting the need to develop a writing practice that is process-oriented, that is patient, that is all these things I said before. And the kind of advice I give for moments of crisis. So I'm talking about the days when I call them the reverse magnet days. The days when you come to your work, you might have already had a plan of, you know what you need to do, or, you're like, I'm working on my book, or I'm working on my dissertation, or I have to finish this article. And you come to your workspace or wherever you decided you were going to work, and it seems like there is a reverse magnetic field repelling you very powerfully from the work. It seems boring. It seems bland. You feel like you are going to die if you're going to try to do this, and you're going to die of boredom. You want to bang your head on the table until blood comes out of your forehead and fills your eye. I can continue. I'm a very creative person, but you fill the blanks, right? You've all been there. This is the valley of the shadow of death. Some days will be like this. Now, when you're in this state, first of all, I want to talk about the reason. So there are many possible reasons, but 99% of the time, we are talking about exhaustion. Exhaustion, burnout, you've depleted yourself, you have not been paying attention to your energy reserve, and you overspent it, you're overdrawn, you said yes to too many things, you didn't set good boundaries. To your students, to people in your life, whomever, and you've reached a point of exhaustion Now I want to go all woo woo on you and mention one of the most wonderful sources of advice that I've ever found, which is the Chinese ancient book of changes, the I Ching. Now, you don't know a lot about the I Ching. I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but like everything else in the world, there is now an app for it. The I Ching is basically an oracle where you cast, and now you can do it online. You can cast, it used to be coins or haystack or whatever, but now you can just cast it online, and it gives you what's called a hexagram, and then a changing line, and the next hexagram that the hexagram you got changed to. The hexagrams are basically beautiful, extremely wise poetry. Now, I'm not going to get into like, do I believe that the I Ching is really responding to the moment? It's kind of quantum physics kind of thing, right? I work with it holistically. I work with it. I write down sometimes the beautiful verse with the good advice. I think about it. It emerges back in my writing, in my journaling when I and so I work with it as a body of text that's really beautiful. So the one I want to talk to you about is actually the first I Ching hexagram I ever received, which might tell you a little bit about the crisis mode in which I was. And I asked about my book, which I was very stuck on. And I got the one that's called Exhaustion. I have the text for it right now here. It's on this is a draft for one of my book chapters that starts by talking about exhaustion. And it's hexagram 47, and it goes something like this. A dead sea, its water spent eons ago, more deadly than the desert surrounding it. The superior person will stake her life and fortune on what she deeply believes. Triumph belongs to those who endure. Trial and tribulation can hone exceptional character to a razor edge that slices deftly through every challenge. Action prevails where words will fail. And then there's the situation analysis under that. This is the realm of the shaman. You have exhausted every alternative, spent yourself completely, taxed body and mind beyond your former limits. Survival and salvation lie beyond your reach now. Very cheerful, right? Only transcendence to a new existence, a higher plane of being, will see you through. The old you is just a dry husk. You can't return to it. Metamorphosis is the only grace offered. You can only return to your homeland, a new you. Unless you've been through a moment of sheer exhaustion, you may not understand how this oracle, to me, is uplifting and inspiring. The basic idea of the advice is pay attention. You have reached a point where doing what you were doing until now is not working anymore. Doing what you're doing killed you. Your old you is a husk. It's dead. It's a cocoon that you need to climb out of. And the only grace is in metamorphosis. You have to completely accept that survival through your old routines, whatever you were doing before, your old identity even, is impossible. And now you have to find a new way. So I think that this is a wonderful piece of advice. I obviously live by it. But I want to talk a little bit more about something that's very common, a reason why we get to this point of exhaustion in academia. And I think a lot of time what happens is that we have a transition in our life. But we still like a life-changing transition. Somebody gets sick that we're taking care of, or we become parents, or we move to a different city, or we start a graduate program. Something fundamentally changed, but we refuse to accept that it changed. In terms of we refuse to accept that we have to adjust, that we can no longer work in the way we've worked before. All of us learned to write to deadlines and had success writing to deadlines. If you're a graduate student, there was this paper that you wrote, that you waited for the deadline, and out came this beautiful thing. And then we become dependent on that. For me, that needle done broke when I was on the tenor track, started with a newborn, had another baby, and was trying to write something very different than all I've written before, which is a very theoretical, ambitious book, my first book, which I didn't try to make, it wasn't very close to my dissertation at all. So I was trying to keep going as if I can keep going like I did before. And the expectation of myself was to continue at the same rate. And it took several years before I, basically fucking collapsed because of trying to do that. Because in the meantime, I was continuing to work in this way and get, positive reinforcement, awards, grants, research money to continue to do this. But in a deep, profound layer of, my inner being, something was silently screaming, you have to stop because you're going to make yourself sick and you're going to, or you're going to harm your children by making yourself sick if you continue to work in this way. So when crisis hit, please, I already said that before, stop, drop, and roll. And one of the things that I would urge you to consider is, have you reached a point of exhaustion? Do you need to understand you need to step away and survival is no longer possible for you when you're trying to, you're trying to do what you've been doing? The situation is not adding up. Something fundamental has changed. Instead of accepting it, you are fighting it. And you are drowning in the quicksand because you're not relaxing back, right? If this is the situation, the first thing, if you're not in therapy, go to fucking therapy. It's worth your last savings. And go to a good therapist, right? Not somebody to be like, nah, try harder. Let me give you cognitive behavioral interventions without addressing whatever is coming up for you. So that would be my first advice. But just basically explore what the writing block is trying to tell you. Don't try to force your way through it. Interrogate it. Stop production because production stopped anyways. And instead of producing during your writing time, show up and just know that you're allowed to just explore what's going on. You can journal, you can take a walk, go on artist dates, which is Julia Cameron's second tool, which means, go to a museum, go to a bookstore, go to a stationery, leave everything, go on a vacation if you can afford to, or just sit there all day and cry if that's what you feel like doing. But when you reach that point of exhaustion, it's potentially an incredible gift that can allow you to fully and deeply explore what has stopped working. And remember what it says. It's talking about triumph belonging to those who endure by understanding that survival is impossible and only transformation, only transcendence to a different plane can get you through. So this seems like a very stark oracle to receive from I Ching, and I find it to be one of the most goddamn useful advice I've ever gotten. It took me a long time to start following this advice. So I know it doesn't seem like a very practical set of rules of do's and don'ts, but I'm running out of time. But this is my advice. Shift your perspective, shift your approach, explore your block. Happy writing. My time on my phone is about done, and I want to still share this video